Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Let's just dive right in today because we're looking at something that is fundamentally transforming education across the globe. We're talking about the true engine of dynamic educational change, pedagogical leadership, specifically within IB schools. If you've ever wondered why some schools feel like these vibrant, buzzing hubs of continuous growth, while others, well, they just feel stuck in the mud of endless administrative red tape, you're in exactly the right place. So I want you to really think about this for a second. What is the fundamental, absolute primary task of any school or educational organization? Is it balancing the budget, keeping the facilities clean, managing staff schedules? And look, while all those things are absolutely crucial to keep the lights on, the core function, literally the only reason the building exists in the first place, is to enhance the learning of all students. Everything else is secondary. And when school leaders align their entire focus around that single primary task, absolutely incredible things start to happen.
Right, so that brings us to the core concept here. Pedagogical leadership is essentially the effective management of resources. We're talking people, time, and money, specifically to ensure the enhancement of teaching and learning. It's about making sure every single decision loops back to address the school's overarching mission. To be effective, school leaders must view themselves first and foremost as pedagogical leaders, not just as administrators. You aren't just managing a building, you are leading learning.
I love how educational researcher Thomas Sergiovanni frames this. He argues that pedagogical leadership is really about developing human capital by helping schools become caring, focused, and inquiring communities. It's brilliant, right? Great leaders don't just hand down top-down directives and check boxes off a list. They build a school's capacity. They're actively developing the intellectual and professional capital of their teachers so that those teachers can, in turn, develop the academic and social capital of their students.
Here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. First, defining pedagogical leadership. Then, the 7 leadership intelligences, followed by the dimensions of effective leadership, breaking traditional hierarchies, and finally, living the learner profile.
Let's kick things off with part 1, defining pedagogical leadership and building a community of learners.
In the IB framework, we really have to stop looking at schools as factories. They are communities of learners. And a pedagogical leader's real job is to lead the study of the teaching and learning process itself. This takes a really deep, hands-on understanding of what's actually happening in the classroom. It's based on a constructivist approach, this idea that knowledge isn't just handed down from on high, but actively constructed by students and teachers working together. It's a leadership style intensely focused on teacher quality and student learning, all anchored by a fierce commitment to the IB learner profile.
Moving right along to section 2, the 7 leadership intelligences, or the anatomy of a leader. First up, strategic intelligence. And remember, intelligence in this context isn't some fixed, you're born with it trait. It's highly learnable. IB leaders have to be forward-thinking. You have to see the big picture and spot those emerging educational trends. But it's not just about daydreaming about the future, right? It's about translating that grand strategy into tangible, everyday action and getting your people aligned behind shared values.
Then we have pedagogical intelligence, which is, honestly, the absolute heart of the matter. This is that crucial ability to look at a curriculum and figure out which teaching approaches actually work best for your students. A leader with high pedagogical intelligence builds a culture that deeply values professional learning. They know that to succeed, you have to constantly build up the school's institutional knowledge and tackle those tricky pedagogical dilemmas head-on to improve the reality of the classroom.
But leading a school is like a giant puzzle, and strategic and pedagogical intelligences are just 2 pieces. Effective leaders also need cultural intelligence, really harnessing the power of diverse communities. Entrepreneurial intelligence, taking smart risks and innovating. Relational intelligence, building genuine trust. Reflective intelligence, critically analyzing your own mental frameworks. And finally, heuristic intelligence, which is basically that rapid gut-level insight. Put them all together, and you've got this incredibly adaptable leadership toolkit. Okay, section 3, dimensions of effective leadership. Let's look at the 4 pillars. So let's zoom out and look at the external structure for a moment. We've got 4 interconnected dimensions here: responsive, responsible, inclusive, and network leadership. They play entirely unique yet deeply intertwined roles in building a healthy school culture. When these 4 pillars are firing on all cylinders, leadership actually transitions from a static administrative desk job into a living, breathing movement within the school. Let's break those down a bit. Responsive leaders are the ones actively spotting and addressing the needs of students and teachers, making sure resources are actually getting where they need to go. Responsible leadership? That's about taking ownership of decisions and using critical self-reflection to drive improvement. Inclusive leadership is driven by this absolutely non-negotiable belief that all children can learn, period. And network leadership is all about collaboration. It's leaders across different roles dovetailing to share responsibility. It is definitely not a one-person show.
Which brings us to Section 4, breaking traditional hierarchies. This is a major paradigm shift.
Now, a shift of this magnitude, it's going to cause some friction, for sure. The thing is, this distributed, collaborative model often clashes pretty hard with traditional systems. In a traditional hierarchy, like the model historically seen in Japanese schools, for example, authority is super concentrated at the top. It's very top-down. But the IB model relies on distributed leadership. You've got teams of coordinators, coaches, and department heads all sharing the load. Moving from that top-down setup to a collaborative one often triggers resistance, simply because it requires a massive cultural shift in how the whole school governs itself.
Finally, Section 5, living the learner profile and actually modeling this leadership. Look, to truly transform a school's culture, leaders literally have to walk the talk. We can't expect students to embody the IB learner profile if the adults aren't doing it first. As a thinker, a leader has to back up their decisions with clear evidence. As a communicator, they keep agendas totally open and transparent. To be principled, every single decision needs to be rooted in ethics and fairness. And to be open-minded, a good leader doesn't shut down dissent. They actually encourage critical debate and react positively to criticism from staff, and yeah, even from students. And that brings us to this really profound truth. School administrators have to empower teachers so teachers can empower students. Trust has this massive trickle-down effect. Think about it. If a principal micromanages teachers, demanding endless signatures and treating them like children, that lack of trust becomes the hidden curriculum of the school. But when a leader creates a safe space for teachers to take risks and grow, those teachers pass that exact same trust and empowerment right down to the students in their classrooms.
So we've gone through the intelligences, the dimensions, and the sheer power of modeling the learner profile. Pedagogical leadership isn't just some fancy administrative title. It is a full-on commitment to keeping learning at the absolute center of everything you do. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought for your day. How are you going to foster a community of learners in your own educational context? How will you use your resources, your intelligence, and your empathy to empower the people around you? Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep learning, keep leading, and I'll see you next time.